what we talked about last week, and I think, who else, did anyone else have trouble getting into NamaStream, the platform? Did anyone try and not, did you get in?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So one of the reasons we're transitioning right now from our first platform, which was called NamaStream, to a better platform is because it's a little clunky getting in. So the new platform experience, we're in the midst of that, rolling it out to our clients. And I hesitated putting you right into that platform because we haven't gone through some more testing as of this point. So we're going to stay with NamaStream, but by the end of it, we should be able to transition you really smoothly to a better platform that's easier to get in. So I apologize. Hi, Liz.
How are you?
Very good, very good. So welcome today to our second session. It is mindfulness of the body. And mindfulness of the body is the first foundation of mindfulness. So when we talked last week about establishing an anchor and kind of developing a practice in awareness, which is really what these practices do, is just building this open field of awareness where we're really participating in life fully, that it's not just passing us by. And, I know that yesterday is a good example of that, right? Just the news coming out and the tragic loss of Kobe Bryant and his daughter. I was reflecting on that, and it just felt jarring, right, to get that news, even though I'm not a basketball fan. And you can't, it's kind of undeniable to not be affected by something like that because of the just pure tragedy of the loss. So I wanted to start there today, and I wanted to read something to you. And so I'd like to invite each of you to sit up nice and tall in your seat, and you can uncross your legs. And just close your eyes. So this is not a formal practice. I'd like you to just open your field of awareness right now to just being here, landing here in this space. Just noticing your body, really bringing your attention inward for a moment. And you can even notice your sit bones in the chair, your feet on the ground, the placement of your hands, any which way. And opening this field of awareness to include the sounds of life happening around us. Just noticing how these sounds move into your field of awareness and out of the field of awareness. And just allowing them to do that again and again. And now opening to this poem. What if you knew you'd be the last to touch someone? If you were taking tickets, for example, at the theater, tearing them, giving back the ragged stubs. You might take care to touch that poem, brush your fingertips across the lifeline's crease. When a man pulls his wheeled suitcase too slowly through the airport, when the car in front of me doesn't signal, when the clerk at the pharmacy won't say thank you, I don't remember they're going to die. A friend told me she'd been with her aunt. They'd just had lunch, and the waiter, a young gay man with plum black eyes, joked as he served the coffee, kissed her aunt's powdered cheek when they left. Then they walked half a block, and her aunt dropped dead on the sidewalk. How close does the dragon's spume have to come? How wide does the crack in heaven have to split? What would people look like if we could see them as they are, soaked in honey, stung and swollen, reckless, pinned against time? By Ellen Bass. Just letting those words settle in. Notice how the body received those words, reminding us of impermanence. And if you had to pick one part of you, one place inside your body, your physical form, where those words landed most acutely, I'd like you to name that. And consider perhaps shining a light there, this little internal light of curiosity. If you were pulled away by sound or distraction, just simply acknowledge that and return. Returning to that space inside with tenderness. Now relaxing that method, softening your awareness back into this present moment and acknowledging your feet back on the ground and this seat supported by the chair and life happening all around us in this precious moment. And I'll invite you to open your eyes and receive the light of the room back in and return to our space that we're sharing. So I'd like to open that up and invite you to share if you noticed where that landed for you or how that landed, if you're willing to share with the group.
Just physically, we were talking about
Physically.
So I was talking about the body, so my thoughts and everything seemed to land in my head, which is where a lot of things end up landing in my life. But I noticed I started the meditation sitting upright, and I thought my posture was pretty good, and I don't know if it was just the weight of everything. But I ended a little slumped. I thought, thinking too much. So I let it go.
Yeah.
Just my thoughts.
Very good. Thank you for sharing.
Mine hit me stomach, gut, because it was to me, it was a little bit of an anxiety producing reminder of impermanence. And, that's
Yeah.
something we all face and have. Part of the reason I think why mindfulness to me is of value is to learn about
beautiful. Yeah, that poem is a little startling,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? But very honest. Anybody else want to share?
I was totally felt it here. I felt emotional about it. I don't know if it's because of the news yesterday. We're all kind of like, I don't know, a little shattered. But yeah, I just felt like I couldn't absorb the weight of the responsibility that we have on other people because I feel so fragile right now.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you. Liz, anything to share?
I would have to agree with Laura. Mine was at the pit of the stomach, and I think it was just like anxiousness of thinking about my own loved ones and what that would feel like. So,
Right. It's raw.
mhm.
And it's just one of those things, you know, it really stops you in your tracks. Right? And when we got the news yesterday, of course, it was that he had been in that helicopter, and then soon hearing about his daughter being with him. And of course your thoughts going to, well, how could that be? Right? What I love about these practices and am so grateful for is that as jarring as impermanence, the truth of it, because we don't know when we're taking our last breath, we don't. It's the human experience. It's something we share. It's this common humanity. But what I'm so grateful for impermanence for is that it grounds you in what's important right now, what truly is most important. And all of those other things, when we get grounded in that, they soften, they lose their grip just a little. And it provides a sense of urgency to really focus on those things that are coming up. Like when you're asking yourself that question of what is the most important thing in my life right now, who are the most important people, that question becomes easy to answer. And then we can focus in on life happening and allowing all the clutter of the mind to just soften a bit and spill away. So, as hard as it is to accept this truth of impermanence, it is this mind-changing practice. And we've talked about this. We talked about this in our signature training. But it's something that you can practice every day for the rest of your life. Because this body, we're in a body that's constantly changing. And we witness constant change happening around us all the time. And when we acknowledge these truths and we get more open to impermanence, accepting that truth of the matter, then we do feel more anchored in the present moment of life because we don't want to miss it. So how do we do that? And that's what we're here today to talk about, is how can we use the body, acknowledge the preciousness that's right here, and how can we be reminded that this preciousness won't always be true. It won't always be here with us. So how do we make the most out of what's happening right now and live without fear crippling us? The more we turn towards it, the more the fear dissolves and we feel more freedom. We have access to it and more courage. Remember, the courage, the spaciousness of the heart, we talked a little bit about this. The capacity of the heart is boundless. It's bigger than we could ever conceive, this capacity of the heart. And inside the heart space is where we find the courage to face these truths and stay open to life in all of its joys and all of its difficulties. And it is a practice. So, mindfulness of the body. We anchor in the body. We talked about using the body as an anchor, looking at potentially the hands. Remember, we worked with the hands and the sensation in the hands, the aliveness there. We looked at the breath and noticed how the breath was coming in and how long it stayed and how it left. And we also talked about supporting ourselves when we need a little more kindness, as that self-critic will nevertheless rise up, right? As the stressors of life will try to pull us out of that understanding of preciousness. I had a really busy 2 weeks, work was just really, really too much. And I found myself, just feeling really agitated on Saturday, not having a day off. I worked Saturday morning, worked late until the night, Friday night. And we were really lucky, we were at the Wharton School of Business teaching. And it was such a gift, right, to get to do that. But I still couldn't deny the agitation was there. And I was so frustrated that I still noticed the agitation coming up well into my day on Saturday, even though I was home and my husband was cooking and the kids were around. And it was holding all of that. Accepting that agitation was present, I could keep it in the back seat and remain kind of steady, as steady as possible. So it was okay, I didn't have to push it away. It could just be present. It was like a red flag, right? Like, Jen, pay attention to this because you're just pushing too hard. And so the gifts of the practice are there if we pay attention, if we turn towards them. And when we start getting more comfortable with this ever-changing field of the body, we could trust that agitation, it might be lingering longer than we want it to, but it will undoubtedly change. It will undoubtedly peak, and it will fall away just as fast as it came. So it could be there. We could be with it. And we could still attend to the responsibilities right in front of us. Being with our kids, being with our partners, doing our work. And so that's part of the practice. It's part of the practice. So what I'd like to do today is I think they're bringing out all the food. Yeah. So I'd like you guys to go ahead and get your food and come back. And then we're going to go into about 10 minutes of mindful eating. So there won't be any talking. I'll kind of guide you through things to pay attention to as you're taking your food in. So when you come back, just put your food in front of you, and then we'll guide you through this practice of eating mindfully. And then we'll unfold the rest of the lesson from there. Sound good? Okay. Great. So we'll take about 5 to 8 minutes max in getting our food and all of that.
Good.
I'd like you to just bring your hands to your lap. And I'd like you to bring your gaze down to your plates in front of you, to the food in front of you. And just really notice how beautiful this food is that's sitting before you. Just notice the colors, the vibrancy, the different textures. Just really opening to this sense of just seeing your food in front of you. And notice how that just naturally opens the heart with a sense of gratitude for this food in front of us that someone else prepared so lovingly for our group today. And we can also even acknowledge all of the people that not only prepared the food, but got the food here. How did this food get here? Imagining all the beings that not only delivered and prepared the food, but grew this food that sits in front of you. And as that's settling and opening you into this field of gratitude, bring your attention now to this sense of smell, which may have already been creeping in, but now fully open to that experience of smelling and taking in the aroma. You might even close your eyes and take some deep breaths in and out. Noticing how your body just naturally responds to this delicious smell in front of you. You may also notice that as you're doing this, that your mouth starts feeling more moisture as the body prepares to enjoy this meal. And if your eyes are closed, you could go ahead and open your eyes. And very slowly, kind of with the gaze softened on your meal in front of you, I'd like you to begin eating. So I'd like you to eat very slowly. And I'd like you to take your time chewing your food. So especially with this first bite, let's all prepare your spoon or your fork, whatever you're choosing to eat first. And as that spoon or fork lifts up towards your mouth, notice how you're feeling inside. And go ahead and bring the food into the mouth and notice this explosion of flavor and how your teeth and tongue work together to chew the food. And see if you could just be very present in that process, encouraging yourself to eat very slowly, carefully, chewing the food completely before swallowing the food. Once you swallow this first mouthful of food, pay attention to how it feels going down and how the body's receiving the food. And then you can continue. So just really slowing down this process. We're going to keep it slow for the next 5 minutes. So I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes. And you'll hear these tones. And I'd like each of you to at least slow things down 50% during this next 5 minutes. 50% slower than how you would normally eat. Okay? So you'll hear 3 chimes just bringing us into this field of awareness. And we'll keep this 5-minute window in silence So also notice any awkwardness, just naming it, acknowledging it, noticing the sounds of people eating, the sounds of your silverware against the dishes. You could just invite it all in as part of the experience. So we'll be in silence the next 4 minutes. In full loving awareness. And soon you'll hear the chimes of the bells. And when the sound of the chimes come in, I'd like you to set your utensils down and just close your eyes for a minute as those tones dissipate, and just bring your awareness inside, just kind of noticing how things are right now. I'd like each of you to really check in and notice if you feel satisfied or if you're still hungry. Notice if there's any feelings, pleasant or unpleasant, tones, or neutral. Notice also if there's any discomfort in the body. Notice if there's ease. And notice if you have any thoughts rising up or strong emotions. Just notice what's here right now in the field of the body, in the field of the heart, and in the field of the mind. Now, if your eyes are closed, I'd like you to go ahead and open them when you feel ready. You could come back to our space together, just relaxing the method we were in. Very good. And I'd welcome any sharing here on that experience. And you could keep eating if you're still ready to go ahead
For
and
me,
eat.
it was a conscious struggle to keep myself slowed down.
Mm,
I'm just used to rushing through these parts of life.
right. Did you notice like a self-critic voice kind of come in?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Slow down at every point, reminding myself. Slow down, savor, slow down, texture, every
Mhm.
point of it. I had to work at it.
Mm. And were you able to be with that understanding of it?
Yes.
Good. Very
I
good.
think it's something that if practiced, you could become more natural.
Very good. Very good.
I agree. I think I was the same way where it was a struggle for me to sort of, focus in on that. But
Yeah.
I think once I did, it was, an enjoyable thing because I don't think I sort of, sometimes, you don't take that time to specifically do that and you're kind of multitasking. And so
Yeah.
enjoying a meal or really sitting down to do that is,
Mhm.
I had to keep bringing myself back to that. But it's
Mhm.
something that I think over time, it would be a big positive that you're not having that critic keep coming up and, and the thoughts that keep
Right.
coming up during it. But
And so the key
slow
is,
down a little bit, which is good.
right, that's good. But the key is when the critic, even if the critic's there and stays the whole time,
Just allowing it.
just allowing it to be there, right? It's kind of opening to it, welcoming it in, right? Okay, you're here. Sit in the back seat, but you could be here, right? Anything else? Did you notice that the food tasted different? Did anyone notice that?
I actually feel full enough, but I'm looking forward to the greens and the salad
Yeah,
more so than filling me.
right, right. And letting that be okay.
Yeah.
Like food can just be enjoyable, right? Yeah, which is so important, right? You could acknowledge, wow, I'm pretty satisfied. Like if I had to stop eating right now, I could. But it's okay that I want to finish my meal. That's okay too. We often, especially women, especially in our culture, have such a, interesting relationship with eating and food, right? And so there's a lot to work with there for all of us.
I think by focusing on the food more so, normally when I'm eating, I realize that I'm really getting through it to get on to the next task.
Mhm.
And so the fact that I was focusing on that, I didn't have that urge
Yes,
to okay, let me get this done because then I can do this.
right.
So, and physically, I usually when I'm done eating have this sort of I feel like my food is here.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that because I was taking the time to.
So common, right? Yeah.
I think too, what surprised me is the gratitude for the
Mm.
because I don't think about it, it's just always there, but, you know, it's not always there for a lot of people. And so just, you know, appreciating,
Right.
you know, our fortune.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
And even acknowledging the hunger prior to,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm. Yeah, good. Very good. Anyone else want to share before we move on? So good. If you could even just try to incorporate one mindful meal a week.
That is one thing that I thought of when I was doing, not necessarily about what's happening here, but I thought at work, I'm usually eating at my desk.
Right.
And constantly being interrupted, and that's just what it is, just, then you don't even know what you ate. And then at night, my husband and I, we probably put on the TV and listen to the news or something, you know.
Right.
And then, of course, you really get riled up then, you know. And I thought to myself, oh, I should try this at home, and we should try to do it a few times a week.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd
So nice.
I'll try it.
Right. And that's part, you know, that's why we called this course, you know, the art of mindful living. Because we often think about the practice of mindfulness in a very rigid way, right? Like I have to do my practice for 5 to 10 minutes in the morning, or I won't have the neural pathways to my prefrontal cortex, right? And we stress that because it is, while it's important and critical really for the neurological benefits of the practice, the idea is that that formal practice will ripple out into ordinary life. And by integrating more opportunities to eat mindfully and walk mindfully and talk mindfully, right? And pause throughout your day and incorporating some of these micro mindfulness practices, your life just naturally kind of changes for the better. And we start appreciating so much more the food in front of us and the conversation before us, and even the disagreement that we might have or notice coming up. Right? We could see the beauty in that. And we could start to get more curious and open to how this can add to our life instead of seeing it as like an obstacle to tackle. Right? Very, very good. So mindfulness doesn't stop on your cushion, this practice. And it's meant to be shared. So you don't have to have gone through thousands of hours of training to share the practices. Just sitting with your husband with the TV off and the music off and the distractions set aside, and just maybe even starting your meal just for 2 to 3 minutes in silence, and then just enjoying your conversation with more presence. That's so beautiful. And it's so few and far between. I mean, I can't tell you how busy our evenings are with, you know, and I know most if not all of you can relate. You're often, running in 2 different directions, or all of you are running in different directions, right? Or just plowing through your meal to get work done or be at the next meeting. We're all living this life in 2020. So just having goals that are attainable is super helpful. So while it might be wonderful to do one mindful meal a day, right? Is that realistic? Probably not. Probably not for most of us. But one mindful meal a week, or just starting with one mindful meal a month, is absolutely attainable for each of us. I believe that. So I'm going to read another poem to you. This one's not as gutting, I promise. And I think probably you guys have heard this one before, but it's one of my favorites, and it's one in which I come back to quite often. So I love Mark Nepo. He's one of my favorite writers. He writes stories and poems and just journaling. So, and this one is called Precious Human Birth. Of all things that exist, we breathe and wake and we turn it into a song. There is a Buddhist precept that asks us to be mindful of how rare it is to find ourselves in human form on earth. It is really a beautiful view of life that offers us the chance to feel enormous appreciation for the fact that we are here as individual spirits, filled with consciousness, drinking water, and chopping wood. It asks us to look about at the ants and the antelope, at the worm and the butterfly, at the dog and the castrated bull, at the hawk and the wild, lonely tiger, at the 100-year-old oak and the 1,000-year-old patch of ocean. It asks us to understand that no other life form has the consciousness of being that we are privileged to. It asks us to recognize that of all the endless species of plants and animals and minerals that make up the earth, a very small portion of life has the wakefulness of spirit that we call being human. That I could rise from some depth of awareness is to express this to you, and that you can receive from me in this instant a part of our precious human birth. Sorry. You could have been an ant. I could have been an anteater. You could have been rain. I could have been a lick of salt. But here we were blessed in this time, in this place, to be human beings alive in rare ways we often take for granted. All of this to say, this precious human birth is unrepeatable. So what will you do today knowing that you are one of the rarest forms of life to ever walk the earth? How will you carry yourself? What will you do with your hands? What will you ask, and of whom? Tomorrow you could die and become an ant, and someone will be setting traps for you. But today, you are precious and rare and awake. It ushers us into grateful living. It makes hesitation useless. Grateful and awake, ask what you need to know now. Say what you feel now. Love what you love now. So we'll include this in our supportive materials. And I would urge you, as you're going through your practices this week, if that was touching for you, to perhaps give it a read. Because it's very thought-provoking. And these two foundations of the practices, these very traditional foundations of the practices, work together. So the more that we can land, or I don't want to use that word, the more we could begin by planting a seed of preciousness into any situation, or perhaps the beginning of the day, which is our recommendation. Just by, upon waking, how precious that is. Notice how it transforms you. Because preciousness, of course, goes hand in hand with impermanence. This now is precious, right? This time together that we're sharing right here in this room is unrepeatable. Sure, you could do another course with me or with another teacher, but this moment with all of us and every being in this room won't happen again. And that's the idea. And it encourages us to just be really present. And that could keep going throughout your day. And it transforms our life, because then when we're handed the difficulty, we're more able to open to it just as it is and see it as also precious, which is sometimes really hard. So if you're ready, I'd like to do a practice. Okay? So we're going to do, it's 12:28. We're going to do 2 practices. And we're going to start out by just kind of taking all of this in, right? So just landing on these ideas of preciousness and impermanence by doing a body scan. So I want you to really be in your body, all right? And then we're going to pause and talk a little bit about how that goes. We'll do a second practice on working with physical discomfort and pain, because that's a really valuable practice that is extremely helpful and supportive. Okay? All right. So you may even want to press away from the table a little bit, because I don't want you to feel like the cloth kind of distracting you.
Is that we can move to this side and
Is
here.
it,
okay now.
you're okay? All right.
It's just like the heart.
Yeah, just getting your, okay, good. Okay, so again, just grounding your feet, and I'll invite you to close your eyes when you're ready. Of course, if that doesn't feel supportive, you could always leave the gaze open, and by just setting the gaze gently forward about 2 to 3 feet, you could kind of rest your gaze there, maybe even blur and soften the eyes. Taking a moment to land here in your body, just as it is. Just notice your quality of being right now. This quality of wakefulness, and how our conversation and dialogue thus far has really supported this quality of wakefulness. Before moving into the body scan practice, I'd like to invite each of you to bring your right hand on your heart. And just rest it against your chest. Let it be heavy for a moment. Just noticing all of the aliveness right here in this heart space. And the preciousness of the heart beating. The breath moving. The preciousness of this very moment. Relaxing your hand down. I'd like to encourage each of you to swallow deep down into your belly. Just dropping your awareness there below the navel. Perhaps even softening the low belly for a moment and encouraging the breath to land there in this belly space. Now bring your attention down to your feet, your toes. You might even notice your ankles in your shoes or boots. And if you're having any trouble connecting to this space, you could even just wiggle or move your toes very mindfully, just kind of feeling your toes inside your shoes. Now encourage stillness there. Notice all of the aliveness in the feet, as if you were exploring your toes and feet, your ankles from the inside out. Kind of looking around. And notice how we can bring this seed of preciousness just into our feet, thanking them for carrying us around. For all the things that we do, moving about in the world. And now gently guiding your attention up to your knees. Whether you're wearing pants or a dress or a skirt. You might even tighten up the muscles or space around the knees so that you could feel them a little bit more, just so your awareness could land there, the space of the knees. This space of the knees that move and propel us forward in life. Space of the knees that helped us run and jump and play as children or adults. Space of the knees that ache. That require more or less, more rest as this body changes. Just looking inside the knees for a moment with loving awareness into this preciousness in the body, in the human form. And bringing your awareness now, tracking up your thighs, your femurs, into your hips, your pelvis, your groin and inner upper thighs, your low belly, the space at center. See if you could fully land your attention there, and I would encourage you to even move any muscles supporting the space of the hips or groin, just gently tightening or releasing if you need to land softly in this space. space of the root where energy resides. The space where we can receive pleasure, where we could give life. The space of the body that we could just turn towards with awareness, with loving awareness. See if you could relax. This preciousness of the human form. And now bringing your awareness up the spine, fully supported by the hips and pelvis, supported by the strong legs and knees and feet. The space of the spine, which is dignified and noble. The space at center. Where we may have experienced both pleasure and pain, mobility and immobility. Just embracing it all, both the freedom and the discomfort. Understanding the preciousness of this spine and how it carries us into the world. And bringing your awareness into the shoulders, your collarbone, the front of the chest, your sternum. And I'd like to encourage each of you to pull the shoulders gently back and down. Maybe even a few times rolling the shoulders up, back, and down. Now relaxing and softening and looking deep inside. Noticing any sensation, acknowledging the movement and responsibility of the collarbone and shoulders to lift us and open us to life just as it is. These shoulders that sometimes carry the weight of the world, feeling soft and open and alive. And now bringing your field of awareness down your arms, through your elbows and into your hands. You could wiggle your fingers if that helps. Encourage awareness there. Just noticing this aliveness in the hands, the energy of the hands, how these hands help us through life in every capacity, in every tenderness, in our work, in our play, in all of our relationships. Notice this natural arising of gratitude for these hands, the preciousness of having hands. And bringing your field of awareness now to your neck, your chin, your jaw, your cheeks, your lower lip, your upper lip, your teeth, your nose, your eyes, your eyelids, your eyelashes, your eyebrows, your forehead, your ears, your hair and skull. See if you could relax your face completely and acknowledge all of the beauty right here. Take a deep breath. Empty the breath completely on the exhale. I'd like to invite you to bring that right hand back to the heart space. And notice this field of the heart. Notice the qualities that are right here. And when you're ready, you could just drop your chin down towards your chest. When you're ready, you can encourage the eyes to open as the light settles in. We could come back to the room. How is everyone feeling? Yeah, yeah. When was the last time you thought about your eyebrows? Well, that's not a good question for women, right? So that is a very traditional practice, right? So a body scan, you've probably done the body scans where you kind of grip, hold, and relax. That's another method. So we could just bring our attention into the body with a theme, and we used preciousness and gratitude here. Right? So, and this is very helpful, especially when we're faced with something limiting happening in the body. Right? So we could still have this sense of beautiful gratitude towards parts of us that have changed. Right? So if there's a part of you that's injured or, I could think of a couple parts of me right now. We all can. Because so often when when something's failing us or we're really struggling, we tend to, can't believe this is happening, right? We go to the other side of it. So this is a method that can bring you in with this loving kindness, this sense of friendliness towards ourselves. And it shifts things. It really does. And I believe that it promotes healing. when we take greater care for ourselves, right? So, and then of course we know that when we bring preciousness to light, impermanence is part of it. So the not heavy part of impermanence is when things are, when we find ourselves in the difficulties of life, we could trust that this will change too. Right? So we could flip it on its head. Impermanence doesn't always have to feel heavy. It could actually feel very supportive when we're in the muck of life. Because it most certainly will change. Bring your mind for a moment into some of the muck of your life and how it certainly changed. And we could even reflect back to those periods of time with extreme gratitude often. Right? So if it weren't for a certain situation, I would not have, right? I learned this and I shifted or changed or grew. Right? So impermanence is a truth that, yes, can feel overwhelming at times. It could also make us feel free. We don't have to get stuck there in the difficulties. We won't get stuck. And life has already proven that. Nature tells us that. Right? So just it being light, a little lighter out, a few minutes more of light every day as we shift towards the end of winter and into spring. The rebirth that happens around us in spring. It's really beautiful. It's a miracle. Are you open to it? How can you be? Right? So getting out in nature is very important. We've lost touch with our surroundings in nature. I don't know, do any of you like Goop, the Goop podcast? Or Goop as a, you know, it's Gwyneth Paltrow's website and all of that. And, I know she's very controversial, but she has this series on Netflix, and it's where she kind of, they're called labs or whatever, the Goop Lab, and she sends her staff to do all these crazy things. And the second one is with a fella, his name is Wim Hof. Have you ever heard of the Wim Hof method? Well, I'd encourage you. As a matter of fact, I'll assign it as homework. So now you have to, I'm working with a bunch of type A's, so now you'll get it done, right? So he's really, really kooky. He's from Holland. He's from Holland. And he's just this big guy, And he has this breathing technique, and it's been around for many, many years, and it's really rooted in yoga and pranayama breathing practices that are very powerful. And his practice is to work with the breath, the mind trainings, and extreme cold. So they kind of condition you in these controlled therapeutic experiences where you're working with the breath and getting in the right mindset to face these extreme activities. So he has this group doing yoga in their bathing suits at Lake Tahoe in the winter, in the snow, barefoot, right? Then jumping into the lake at the end, they do. But it's very interesting. But what he says in that in the series is, and I truly believe, is that these natural rhythms in us are very connected to the rhythms of nature. It's very natural for all of us to feel like we want to retreat right now in the depth of winter, to sleep more, right? To take greater care of ourselves, to eat foods that are hearty and nourishing, right? We've lost touch with that somehow because we're in this, society of great comfort. So sometimes it is about getting a little uncomfortable and putting yourself out there, going for hikes in the cold, getting fresh air. Very, very good for us. And nature always will rebalance our systems. So you could trust that. Right? So vitally important when we notice things coming up within our bodies and we feel really off, go for a walk. You know, get outside, breathe, touch the trees. You know, lots of wisdom there. So, we're running out of time a little, so I wanted to cover one more topic, and then we'll do a short meditation. But are there any questions or comments or anything anyone wants to share on what we just did? Okay. Good. And you don't have to, here's the thing with these practices, I don't want you to feel like you can't do these things on your own, right? So you could just look inside the body and get really curious about how things are right now. So the method we're doing next is that, right? Getting really curious, like, what do I notice inside right now? What part of me is calling attention, right? What part of me needs attention right now? Just in the physical realm. We're going to stay in the physical realm. Okay? So let's sit up tall. And again, there's no need to close your eyes, but you could certainly close your eyes. I'm an eye closer myself, so don't feel like you have to if I'm doing that. And just sit up nice and tall and maybe take a few deep breaths. And this is just a little micro practice. And as our time together is kind of coming to a close, I want you to just drop your attention fully inside your body. And ask yourself in silence this question. What part of me needs attention right now or is calling me towards it right now? So just look and get curious and notice what's coming up for you. And you might have had an experience where a couple different areas have raised their hand. So I'd like you to just focus on one part. Tell the other parts that you'll come back to them later. And now I'd like you to imagine bringing like a microscope or a magnifying lens to that space inside. An imaginary flashlight, bringing the light there. And now turn towards that space with more curiosity and compassion. And now, bring your attention to your breath and imagine that you could breathe right down into that space that's called its attention, your attention to it. So imagine it's your left shoulder or your right knee, whatever it is. Imagine you could breathe right into that space. And now visualize that. The inhale landing right in the center of it. And the exhale creating spaciousness inside that sensation or part of you that called for attention. The inhale drops you down into the thick of it, and the exhale creates spaciousness there, relaxing whatever's calling to you. Just a few more breaths. It's okay to allow the breath to deepen here. Whatever feels appropriate for you, either way. notice if anything's changed or shifted or dissipated completely. Notice the quality of your mind. Quality of your breath. And the quality of your heart. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. There's our bells. So how did that go for you? Did anyone have a really strong experience or a really noticeable shift?
Extra relaxing for me, because what I was focused on was more of the nervous system.
Mm.
And so for me, I became much more relaxed.
Oh, I like that. That's really cool. Good. Anybody else want to share? Is anyone dealing with an injury or discomfort in the body right now? So it's especially helpful when you are. All right? You can turn directly towards it. So it could just be tension or a knot in your neck or shoulder or something like that. Right? So often we just ignore it. Right? So your practice is an opportunity to look in the body with honesty and say, what's here right now? And when you notice these sensations come up, and I want to say there's a dramatic difference between discomfort and pain. And we're going to experience both no matter what. Okay? Discomfort we could work with, and we could also work with pain. Okay? With discomfort, you may notice that this practice is really effective. Pain may just take the edge off, right? And it could be a more loving way to work with it, so it doesn't overwhelm us. So the pain could still be there, but I could still be functional, right? Discomfort could be dramatically shifted. So we're moving energy in a couple ways. Through visualization practices, they're very powerful. Through breathing practices, through movement practices, and through things like yoga, right? And also through other modalities like acupuncture or acupressure, where it's more like we need that extra support for the energy to move, which if you haven't done, I'd recommend absolutely giving it a try, right? And that's why it works so well, because we need the energy to move in a nice, clean way. And whenever energy gets out of balance, whether it's in depletion or excess, right? Whether it's in depletion or excess, it doesn't matter. If it's out of balance, we're going to feel off, physically, mentally, or emotionally. And it's normal. But we are energetic beings, and we have electricity moving through our connective tissue. And when the connective tissue gets tangled up in tension, it affects our energy in the system. So if you really try and work with these practices and visualize your attention dropping there, that's the first thing. Your attention's there. Now send the breath there. And use the inhale to move oxygen into that space, and the exhale to create a little more spaciousness there. So you may be like this in the knot, and by the end you might be like this. And you do it again and you're like this. And again, you come back to it and now there's more space there, right? And eventually it'll go away. But it's very, very, very effective. And you have more control over it than you think. So when you watch this show, episode 2, some of the episodes are a little graphic. I'll warn you on that. Okay, you'll know what I mean if you look at the titles. But that's the one I'm recommending. Okay? So do with what you wish. Now, I don't want to take up any more time because we're 3 minutes after 1. But so if you need to go, you're welcome to go ahead. But I want to stay for questions if you have any. So,
Will you post who that person is that?
Wim Hof, yeah. Yeah, we just add that to the, I'm sorry?
W-H-I-M?
It's WIMHO. He's a character. You'll definitely get a kick out of it. And I would encourage, I watched it with my husband last night. He was like, he was in there researching workshops, you know. But it's really interesting. There was a guy on there with neurological disease. It was related to, I forget what it's called. Guillain-Barré syndrome? Guillain-Barré? Barré? Yeah, which could be very, something like that. But it could be a very devastating. As a matter of fact, Jake Burton just died of that. The snowboarding guy, Jake Burton. And he went to Wim Hof, and he does an ice bath every day. And he completely healed his body. Amazing. So really interesting. You know, there's some science there. If for anything, just do it for entertainment. He's really engaging. But any other questions? Thank you.
How you mentioned about acknowledging in the car that element of, how did you phrase it?
That agitation could stay in the back seat. Yeah.
So how do you acknowledge agitation, and what is another way, or what is an actual practiced way of acknowledging it? Did you say something? I mean,
Right.
did you verbalize it?
I do personally. That works for me. So it doesn't have to be out loud, but I could just pause and say, okay, agitation's here, right? Or anger, or fear, whatever you want to name. And it doesn't always have to be bad. Like it could be, wow, I feel really joyful today, right? Like what is all this energy? Where did it come from? Let's, and you have to be careful because we grasp at the good stuff, right? We want it to stay. So the suffering happens when we want, yet we know it will shift, right? Can we just be instead of grasping for it? Whereas the aversion to the harder things in life, the agitation or the anger or fear or whatever's coming up, aversion is what causes the suffering, right? So anger's here, and it may be very useful. So anger or agitation or fear, fear could save our lives, right? How often in life does the hair on the back of your neck stand up? Do you listen to that, right? Anger could push us forward in really unbelievable ways. We could be angry at something because of, it's wrong, morally wrong, right? And it could propel us forward very powerfully. Look at Martin Luther King Jr. He was angry. And look how he used that anger. And how many people he's inspired. Right? So we don't have to shy away from that stuff. In Eastern cultures, these emotions that come up that are often more difficult for Americans, for Western cultures, are just a part of being human. Right? Yeah, anger's present today. Okay. Agitation's here. It's probably hormonal. Right? Right? Go in the back seat until you could move through. Right? Do what you have to do. So yeah, you could start kind of talking to yourself. And another thing that was really transformative for me, which I probably should have mentioned earlier, is it could just be a part of you that's angry. It doesn't have to take up all the space. Right? So I could have an angry part there that's present, and there could be a part of me that's sad, that's grieving a loss. But they don't have to take the driver's seat. They could just be a part of me. And I could still be functioning and whole. Right? So you could even say it that way, especially when you're communicating with a difficult conversation, especially in work. You could be really pissed off at somebody that works under you or a peer or something like that, right? But instead of saying, I'm angry, you could say, you know what? A part of me is really angry that this happened. And it comes across in a completely different way. Something Christine's going to talk about next week, which is almost immediately shifted me into a different mind frame, is it also the conversations like that, difficult conversations, and our capacity to manage them really effectively as a leader, they shift before they even happen by just naming things differently. So, for instance, if you have somebody on your team that did a really great job with a project, and you go in and you're like, Sue, that was you're awesome, right? You're awesome. Well, now you're naming Sue as awesome instead of naming the project as awesome. So if you shift just a little and say, Tom, that paper you wrote is awesome. I'm so proud of this project. Well done. Then when Tom puts a piece of work in front of you that's not awesome, that needs more work, it's not going to land for him in such a personal way, because he's not identifying as awesome. He's identifying his work as awesome, which is separate from him. Right? So it's just shifting. So this inner work naturally ripples out into all of our personal relationships. And it could really kind of propel us to that next level when we're communicating. So the next 2 sessions will be about how to apply what we've learned here into interpersonal relations. Okay? So great job, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.